Yo, what's going on, people? You're watching that Christian guy, Jay Walker with TLD. Had to jump on air real quick because you know the world's gone crazy. To be fair, it probably went crazy a long time ago still, but everyone's kind of wallowing in the craziness right now. So this topic, All Lives Matter versus Black Lives Matter. I've been kind of watching it and going across my timeline and everything else and thinking to myself, I don't get if it's a thing that people actually don't understand what the intention is between the Black Lives Matter thing, or if it's a thing where people kind of deliberately trying to attack it, so the best loophole they can kind of find is like a All Lives Matter thing. Because it doesn't take that much, I'd say, knowledge in terms of trying to figure out what it is people are trying to say when they're saying that something matters. What matters has never been exclusive or anything like that. If I say oxygen matters, it doesn't detract or anything from anything else. If I say that gravity matters, it doesn't detract from anything else. So for some reason, in this instance or in this case, it seems that there's this weird little tug of war going on. So I just wanted to delve deeper into it. Usually I kind of go off the cuff, but I had to pull up a few facts and things just to make sure that everyone felt comfortable that it's an informed opinion too. So I want to get into the topic. The first thing I wanted to talk about is the fact that the title says Black Lives Matter is a reflection on the fact that it's saying that other lives matter. So the reason why black is being pointed out, because it's being pointed out because black lives don't seem to matter in comparison to all the other lives that do matter. So for this kind of feeling or sentiment of we're saying that only black lives matter, that couldn't be further from the truth. It's a response to all lives mattering to begin with. And then the next thing I wanted to say is that in terms of a scale, if we're saying that something matters, it's not an epitome or the top of any pyramid. We're not saying that black lives are special. We're not saying that black lives are even important. All we're saying is that they matter. That's it. Just that they matter. We're not saying monumental or anything like that. If we can't get to a point where we're able to just be cool with the fact that black lives matter, then that is also more worrying than the initial argument, I'd say. And for a lot of people, it's kind of like the first time kind of being involved in a movement like this, or being a part of a vibe or a mood or whatever it is you might want to call it. So I know there's a lot of naivety perhaps out there. So hopefully that's something that can be easily cleared up there. If we can't get to a point where we're just saying that they matter, which is just one level above not mattering at all, if we can't at least get it to that stage, then that's a problem. When you're protesting even at that stage, that's worrying. The next thing I wanted to say that in terms of the journey of it, just as a direct comparison and just to map out kind of where we are in history on the timeline, being civil was what it was about in the 60s. In the 60s, we're being treated as less than humans, and the science that was being put across, a lot of evolutionary thinking and such, were categorizing blacks as being 3/5 of human beings rather than actually being human. So one of the things we pushed towards was to be able to allow certain things within just being civil, for the law to reflect being civil to one another as classified human beings. So things like being able to vote, as things like being able to go to school, these were seen as civil rights. So civil rights and human rights are kindred spirits there. So we're on a very, very basic level, meaning that somebody doesn't have the right to kill someone else. There's some level of civility there. And that's as far as things got before Martin Luther King and such was shot in the head, and that kind of came to a grinding halt thereof. There hasn't been any huge or monumental progress since then. So the sentiment of equal rights, that was never achieved in terms of doctrine or law or anything like that. We managed to fit in somewhat into the law of the land, but a push towards equal rights and such was never achieved, nor was the period of compensation or anything like that ever put into practice. So if we're playing a game and one team has been doing illegal activities to attain an advantage, so if we're playing a game for 500 years and one team has been looting, raping, murdering, killing for a sustained period of time, when we then agree that we're going to no longer do that, what then happens? If it was a football match and a team had been cheating and the score was 45-0, what would then happen? Do you continue playing with the score at 45-0 and some people in a oppressed position Or do you attempt to say, okay, so we're going to either all start again, which doesn't work in the economical context, or do you say we're going to compensate those people, so we're going to make it 45-45, and then we play on from there? So that never happened, hence these huge levels of disparity in America. And if you look at the upper echelons in terms of those who are in the millions and billions and such things, obviously you have a lack of representation from minority groups, and we could go deeper into all the reasons why, but that's probably another video. Yeah, so just something in terms of where you're on the timescale. So we got as far as being civil towards blacks and minorities. Women were also, it's worth noting, able to benefit from that. So things like the right to vote came through civil rights. So nothing amazing, just means that we're giving you some of the things that others take for granted, like voter rights, like being able to attend school, because reading and writing was previously banned for blacks as part of American history, just to be clear on the topic. And in terms of the opposition to highlighting something, so just because something is highlighted, again, it doesn't detract from something else. Many of us throughout the world will celebrate a birthday. That birthday is something that we hold special, so we say happy birthday. It would be illogical to rebuttal that with every day is special. So while every day is special, there's nothing wrong with acknowledging one individual day. If we take another example from there, so something like feeling hungry. If I feel to eat some chicken, then it doesn't therefore mean that I have hatred in my heart towards other meals. It doesn't mean that I don't view other meals as being equal. It doesn't mean that I have a proclivity towards that thing. So there's not usually, in terms of how we go about navigating our lives, this kind of either or thing. If I like dogs, it doesn't mean that I hate cats. There's no comparison that needs to be drawn. And then if we were to broaden it in terms of positive values, if your wife, husband, girlfriend, mother, whatever, if they ask, do you love them? And your response is, I love all people, then they may not feel the trueness of that sentiment. If someone's saying to you, do you love me? And your response is, yeah, I like everybody, I love everybody. You know, there's always throughout our human psyche and human behavior, things are highlighted. So for us to highlight black lives as being something that matters, I don't see why in this instance there would have to be a huge level of controversy that goes there. You know, you look at things like the World Wildlife Foundation, they highlight dolphins one year, they highlight pandas another year as something that needs saving. It doesn't mean that they dislike other animals. It doesn't mean they have hatred towards other animals. It doesn't mean that they view other animals as being less valuable. But obviously we put things on a stage of concern. We operate with things like deadlines in our lives. There's nothing special about the date, but it means that there's something of importance that's coming up and it needs to be done by a certain time. These are pretty normal human things. Yeah, in this instance, it seems to be something of controversy. And I've heard people use the analogy of the house as well, where if you have a house that's on fire and you wanted someone to put out that fire, you wouldn't take the approach of saying all houses matter and watering down each house, which is another good analogy that I heard out there just to demonstrate the point, which I think people are kind of waking up to. Shout out to Logan Paul, a few other people, Billie Eilish as well, I heard talking about it. I think it's slowly going to be something that fades away, the all lives matter thing. But I think what will happen is you will have a group of people that continue perpetrating it because they want to perpetrate it in opposition to Black Lives Matter. They're not actually interested in seeking knowledge or seeking the understanding as to what is being said, as much as opposing the movement. So anything that they can grab onto to oppose the movement, they will, and so there we are. But this video ain't really for those people. This video is for the people who are finding themselves in perhaps an uncomfortable position, a position where perhaps they legitimately just don't know and they want to seek to find out. So there's some information for you in the name of finding out. And if you look at this from a historical perspective as well, there's a few things to bear in mind. In terms of how our countries value lives, how our continents value lives, there's certain things in your history that will point towards whether there are social issues that are in your country and whether or not they've been cured or not. Some of the things that are highlighted, enslavement, invasion, genocide. So throughout human history, these things have happened many times. What I would say is, if we're noting that these things are happening to a specific race or a specific group of people, continuously, then that might tell you that your culture that you're in has a problem with a particular type of people. So if there's genocide against blacks but not genocide against whites, if there's genocide against Asians but not genocide against blacks or whites, that might tell you that the culture that you're living in is hostile towards that group. Additionally to that, the victimhood that often occurs. So there's something in sociology called the ideal victim. If your ideal victim is racialized, then that would be another indicator to you that there's some kind of racial element going on within the country, nation that you're in. So generally speaking, there are certain things that get ruled out straight away. So if we go male versus female, then females tend to make more ideal victims than males, just in terms of empathy. So females are usually highlighted. In terms of which types of females, it tends to be older, as in very old, so 60 plus, or younger. So there's a particular age group. Often on the younger end is what's favoured. So it would be a female, quite young, if we take 9 years old. So something happens to a 9-year-old female, alarm bells start ringing in a society. It's a general rule. If you then also have a race attached to that, in terms of a race of ideal victim, that might also let you know that you have a race problem there. If you look at major cases, major things that have hit the news in terms of recent years, you have things like Megan's Law, which rightly in place but points towards a particular race. You have the case of Madeleine McCann here in the UK. Again, most would say rightly so, but again, it points towards a particular race. So if we consider, would those things have gone the same? If it was a person of colour that was being affected, then that might lead us to thinking, okay, so maybe our society does view things in a particular way that is racially related. And on another topic, I just wanted it to be known, in terms of the equality that we're talking about earlier, I think most minority groups have accepted a certain level of inequality over time. So we're really far away from a kind of superiority complex or feeling like our lives matter more than anyone else's. I'd say we've all kind of accepted that in our lives we're going to have a certain amount of racism, that we're going to have to deal with it, and that we can't fight every battle every day because it would be too exhausting, and we have lives to function in, and it's quite easy to fall into a bracket of just being angry, irrational and paranoid. So we do tend to let most things go. What's unique about this situation is, I think, the level and consistency of it building up, and it will just continue to be a thing where every so often, every few years, if there isn't any change, it's going to just reach a boiling point, and then one incident becomes a point of release for everybody within that society that's been suffering and just feel like enough is enough at this point. If you've been watching the news over a sustained period of time, it would be really difficult to ignore that the police are systematically murdering black people on a regular basis. So it's not a one-off incident that we're talking about here. We're talking about consistency in police murdering black individuals. And usually we get a story of a oops, it was a mistake. Whereas in this case, it was so cavalier, so easygoing, hands in pockets. It was straight up just murder. The only thing they could have been doing to make it more racist and more evil would be if he was whistling while he did it. That might add that extra little touch. But that's why this one has reached such a critical point. And, you know, what is it safe to do as a black person comes into question here. So jogging seems off limits. You're dying from that. Driving seems off limits. Fernando Castile and such things. Going to the shop for Skittles can get you killed straight on right there. So consistently in all aspects and elements of trying to go about a person's daily life, they're facing all of these issues, and often, just to make matters worse, there's no justice attached. And when there's no justice attached, then you then have the issue of feeling like it's systematic. So the system supports that murdering of black people is what we're talking about here. And that's what we're fighting against. That's what we're trying to deal with, just so you can understand the context here. It's not one man, and on top of it not being one man, it's a recognition that it could have been any of us. Out here in the UK, the police, they don't keep any record of how many people die in police custody each year, but typically we're in the hundreds. And the names and such of people who are murdered: Christopher Older, comes to mind in terms of a cover-up if you wanted to go there. I don't like to do conspiracy things, so just do your own research into the name Christopher Alder, and you'll see all sorts of craziness going on there. If you want a direct reference in terms of the BAM statistics and stuff, he's a good guy to start checking out. Additionally to that, in terms of the police force, the KKK influence over the police force has been well documented for years. If you go back to 2006, the FBI went as far as launching an investigation into white supremacy infiltrating the police force. And that was in 2006 under President George W. Bush, those findings. So it's been going on for a long time. The Klan and the police, I don't want to say colluding together, but it's always been a systematic plan to have members of the Klan as members of the police force. And then what do you do in that situation? To some's credit, I've seen applications uncovered in terms of KKK applications, and members have been withdrawn and kicked out of the police force. Bravo. But clearly, there's a race issue deeply embedded within the police force. It's not a few bad apples, otherwise it would be a few deaths. And, you know, this has been going on, I think, for way too long. It's just reached critical point, and that's where we're at with it now. But I don't want to ramble on too long. Just because my main point of the whole video, took over my notes if I had anything left, but my main point was just this all lives matter versus black lives matter thing. If anything, I'd say white people, others, if your lives mattered in the same way that blacks mattered, it would be a huge problem, and you wouldn't want your life to matter, you want it to do more than matter. If your lives were reduced to where our lives are reduced to, in terms of what we live with, what we deal with, yeah, you wouldn't want your life to be viewed under that same value system. So applaud the fact that your life's in a different bracket. You don't have to have those certain worries. You know, if the police pulls you over, chances are you're going to be alright. The police may not even stop you at all, you know. Whereas for most of us, that's not really how we get to live our lives. The fact that we don't commit a crime doesn't mean that we'll never go to prison, doesn't mean we'll never be brutalized by the police, that we'll avoid being brutalized by the police, I should say, and such things. So that's the context that we're talking about here. You know, you don't even get to make it to trial in a lot of the cases here. So hopefully that clears it up. All lives matter versus black lives matter. Y'all have a good day. Y'all stay safe. Keep praying. Keep fighting on. Keep fighting the good fight. And just, yeah, take care of yourselves.